I'll let you do that.
All right. Yeah, I'm Bas Schouten. I work as a principal engineer for Mozilla, and I am the tech lead for Firefox Performance.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And you spoke yesterday.
I did.
Yes, I remember now because I was like, yes, I watched you talk. From up here, believe it or not.
Yeah. I see you peeking out between the curtains occasionally.
Yeah, a couple of times. I'm like, what did I just hear? Like, okay. Talk to us about, Firefox and what they're doing on the performance side.
What we do on the performance side.
Yeah.
So Firefox, the performance team of Firefox is divided in like 3 pieces.
Okay.
One of those pieces is the performance engineering
team. Step in a little closer, by the way.
Right. There we go.
Okay.
One of those pieces is the performance engineering team. They're engineers that help make Firefox itself faster. So they work on the actual code of Gecko.
Okay.
Then the other part, I hope my voice isn't too loud on that.
Just keep going. Or you could just, drop it down here. Yes.
I have a very loud voice.
You're passionate. No, it's passion.
Then another part of that team works on the tooling. So they work on the performance tooling. So that's primarily the Firefox profiler and its integration into various other bits of the browser. And then the final part is the Firefox test engineering team. So they work on like the continuous integration systems and building new performance testing capabilities and implementing new platforms and things like that.
Now, for those who don't think about this, because I'll be very frank, and I think I mentioned this to Annie yesterday, I consider the browser the most important application on the planet. This is just my personal belief. And I'm always rooting for browser engineers because I don't think they get the kudos that they deserve. Because there are 2 applications that I cannot do without. One is Maps or Google Maps, whichever one you want to use. Because, when I'm traveling, I'm like, I need to know where I'm going. And the browser.
And you can always load Google Maps inside the browser.
Exactly. But I'll be dead serious. And in fact, I was actually trying to organize maybe a little stream mid-October because it was like browser day or something like that. And I was like, man, I want browser engineers to come just brag about the work. What do you sense, or is there a conversation internally, just at any browser, but obviously at Firefox, like what do people not necessarily know about, sort of like maintaining a browser?
I think what most people probably don't realize is just the sheer complexity of a browser, right? Which is both because of the internet consists of so many different standards that are interoperable with each other, and the thing that you display, the thing that you render, is not something that you control. If you're, say, a game company and your engine is unable to properly display some feature of your user interface, you go to your front-end engineers and you say, guys, the thing you did, it's not working, do something else. We don't have the option to go to a website and go like, that thing you're doing, that's not great for our interest. Stop doing that. Do something else.
Exactly.
Right? And so we need to try and be fast and work well and be correct for everyone, no matter what crazy thing they can come up with. If it is in the standards, they need to be able to do it, and we need to somehow make it fast. And the amount of possible combinations of things is infinitesimally large.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think and that provides major challenges. And that's not even going into the complexity of individual components, like a JavaScript engine and how incredibly complicated that has become, right? At some point, it was just an interpreter.
Yeah.
And, you can, if you've had some like compiler 101, you can probably imagine pretty easily how that can work and how you can do it. And it's not even necessarily rocket science.
Yeah.
But now there's the JITs, and the JITs do type inference, and there's all these complicated things around, like you actually write bytecode right directly into the memory, and then you make that executable and you start running things on it. And then you need to be clever. And then you go like, oh, somebody's used an integer like 20 times in a row. Let's add something that assumes it's an integer so that we can be faster. And then I also need to add something that if somebody changes their mind for some reason, and the next time this function gets called, it isn't an integer, now I need to have like a bailout path to do something else in that case. And the complexity of that is mind-blowing.
Yeah. I 100,000% agree. And I don't know where, but I remember either reading something and I'm like, man, browsers are just, you know, they look at us like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna have to fix this. Without you realizing you screwed up, I'm going to create this situation where we'll make this work. And that's why I've always said the browser, man, like no question,
And it gets harder, right? Now with single page applications where people are no longer using the platform the way we'd like them to use it, right? If we talk about Ryan's talk yesterday, all of this stuff, we're not even being told what to put up there in a very consistent way, right? There's like a whole bunch of JavaScript running, and it's then constructing these data structures that eventually in some way come into the browser, and we have to make them appear onto the screen.
Yeah. Like, how do you collect some of that feedback where people are like, oh man, it's not working here? Like how does it come in?
I think anybody who tries to collect feedback for a major product is familiar with the fact that 95% of the feedback is probably rubbish or just people screaming at you. We've had people opening bugs. Like literally, you can look at Bugzilla and there's people accusing us of like Firefox purposely crashes on Fox News and it tries to work better on liberal sites and things like that. Right? People come up with the craziest things when it comes when it comes to feedback that they give you, and a lot of it isn't. Hanlon's razor, right? Never attributed to malice, that which can be adequately explained by incompetence. There's people where there's a lot of feedback that it just feels disingenuous. It's like you're just trying to troll us. You're just trying to be angry or something like that, right? And the hard part is filtering out the feedback where the useful bits come in, the things that can really help us build a better product and better serve our users. And that can be anywhere, right? It can be on people finding bugs on Bugzilla. It can be people on Reddit threads or Hacker News, right? We have lots of engineers who read the Firefox subreddit. They read everything about Firefox that comes by in Hacker News, and they try to reply there. We go through our Android App Store, comments and things like that, and we try to do that.
Nice.
So there's a lot of different ways we get feedback, and we also, and this is something that not many people know, and we've been talking about how to be better at this. We used to have IRC, right? But IRC is sort of outdated and it went away, and so we went to like this federated system called Matrix, and we moved our like open source, our public presence there. But not many people are on Matrix or know how to use it. So even though most of our channels, most of our communication there is public, it's rare for people to actually come there and engage with us, and that's actually something we're looking to fix. So it's
I find that people, since we're talking about performance, and I tend to equate when we talk about performance in browsers, opening up DevTools, right? Because that's where the answers are going to lie. I find that people A, don't open up DevTools enough, and B, don't know how to use DevTools well. How do you see a path towards people being much more comfortable with DevTools to diagnose issues?
I would say that there's a real issue there in terms of Firefox DevTools, at least, which I'm most familiar with. We need to think about these things more as real products made for users. They need to be intuitive. They need to be an attractive experience as much as any other piece of software. I remember that I worked at another company and we hired a UX designer who used to design front ends for fighter jets, like the things in the cockpit.
Okay.
And all of their UX designs for us were rubbish, right? Because you shouldn't need, several years of expensive training to learn to use our interface. Right? and I think it's hard because a lot of these
going in with a helmet.
Right? And I think it's hard because a lot of these tools are developed by engineers who have an understanding of the underlying systems that often goes far beyond most of their users.
Yeah.
And I think we could do better, at least at Firefox. I'm not so sure about Chrome. I'm sure they have more resources and more people look at this. But we could do better at building out our dev tools like a product and having the design and the interface done more for the users rather than by the engineers building it. I think there's a lot of room there. And if we make it more intuitive And if we make, better tooltips, better tutorials, all those kind of things. I know there's somebody at Mozilla called Mike Conley who does this thing, The Joy of Profiling. And he has this fantastic podcast that he does helping people, where he sort of just sits and looks at profiles and tries to explain what he's doing and things like that. And I think those types of things are a fantastic way to try and engage more people. But I think they're still no replacement for us actually making the tool itself more user-friendly, less intimidating, less overwhelming.
Yes. I think I found just dev tools in general aren't that friendly, and I'm not calling anyone out. And I'm just saying, I remember hearing from attendees at conferences, because a lot of times that's where I get sort of like a temperature check, right? They're like, oh, we don't even look at oh my God, waterfall charts. And I'm like, well, you do not do what? It'd be like, that's like the heart of it, man. Like, come on. But that's a separate story. Like you said, sort of like, documentation, whatever, to help out. Something else I've always been meaning to ask a browser engineer, and this sort of fits in a performance conversation. People will, look and hear about a shiny new object and shiny new image format, and they're like, oh man, I can't wait till it's added here or whatever. But I've always figured that, and again, in defense of browser engineers, these things aren't light switches, right? They're not like, oh, okay, I'll turn that on when I wake up in the morning, we'll just add it. How challenging is it to add support for, say, a new image format?
Image formats are an interesting example. In a lot of cases, the complexity is not directly in the adding of it.
Step in just a little.
Yep.
Sorry, there we go. No, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
Slowly walking away
it's
from
like
you.
We're both.
In the case of image formats, often there's like a reference implementation or something like that, right? That can get you one part of the way there. That implementation may not be performant enough or something like that, right? But you could at least use it. And then the second thing is, how do you audit that, right? The initial reference implementation can have security concerns and things like that. And I think that's where the challenges often come in. It's like, how to ensure that this particular, because we're not going to write a whole new image decoder ourselves, right? We just don't have the resources, and I don't think that's the way most people work. We use open source components the same way anybody does, right?
Yeah.
We look at something whose license is compatible, and then we import it, right? And the challenge then is often, does it provide sufficient security for our users? Does it provide privacy risks in some way, right? Fingerprinting, you name it. And I think those parts can often get very, very complex because it's often very hard to do. And an audit like that can be very time consuming. It helps when other browsers are already shipping it, right? That gives us some advantages. And I think it's important there to note that we are obviously more resource constrained than, for example, Google is. And when you're doing a whole new decoder or something like that, you're not as much constrained by the mythical man month, right? So if you just have more resources, you can go like, well, here's 10 more people and go and do that particular decoder and look at it to some extent. And so if work has been done by WebKit or Blink to like audit a certain new image format, a new decoder, right? Because it's not the format that's the problem, it's the decoder you use. And that decoder is open source because it's in, WebKit or Blink, Chromium. Then that helps a lot. And then I think it can be reasonably simple. Like it's not trivial. It's not like a light switch. But it doesn't have to be that hard, especially for something as well contained as an image format.
And things that you referenced made me think of that, because you talked about, people trolling, saying, oh, this browser doesn't work on Fox News because, and I just remember, recent image format scandals, people like trolling, being, oh, they're not going to do it because of this and that. And I'm like, you guys don't really understand what's going on here,
And the interesting thing is that a lot of those conversations, they are public, right? If you go into GitHub and you can see the discussions on web standards, and you can see the discussions on image formats. These are things that everybody is thinking about, and I think the vast majority of people are in good faith. And there are concerns, and people have concerns about all kinds of things around image formats, around code, and things like that. And most of the time, they're just whether it's people at Apple, whether it's people at Google, whether it's people at Mozilla, as people just trying to do their jobs as best as they can
100%.
and try and not assume some kind of weird malice behind
Some
things. Right?
conspiracy.
I know that there's I'm very grateful that Google has abandoned the Web Integrity API. I think last night it became known that they're not going forward with it. And I'm very happy about that. I didn't agree with that API, but the level of toxicity that was expressed towards the Google engineers working on that is very bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're just trying to do their jobs.
Yeah. No, I like I said, I am all for engineers working on browsers because I don't believe people remotely come close to understanding like how important that work is, and that, you know, all it takes is like, you know, just someone messing it up, you know, it's like throwing out some malware or whatever to really like, oh, you know, now you understand why, you know, things take time to test and, like you say, audit and making sure every case scenario is like covered.
And people are so vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
In their browsers, like people do their banking in their browsers. People communicate with their government. They might even, in some countries, I believe Estonia, even vote in their browsers, right? It makes for a very vulnerable spot because of so many things you do in there that you may in various ways not want exposed to the world, right? Whether it's your email, whether it's a private conversation with your doctor, whether it's voting, right? Things like that. So that security is incredibly important. And the only time the average user realizes that is when it goes wrong.
Absolutely. And it's the one application that we know everyone has on their phone. You know, like, oh, what do you mean you don't have WhatsApp? What do you mean? Oh, but you have a browser, you know? And I think it's just, I don't think people really think about it in that, you know, in that sense. I'm not shitting on, you know, people who have browser conspiracies, but I just want to make sure engineers are given their flowers and whatnot. Boss man, it looks like it's going to start up again. Thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you.
Where are you situated, by the way?
I live in Amersfoort. It's about 30 minutes outside of Amsterdam.
Oh, okay. So you're local.
33-minute train ride.
Oh, okay. Cool. Awesome. I used to do meetups at the Toronto office.
I know. We actually tried the last time our team was in Toronto. We met up with Annie and we tried to combine it with
yes. You told me about it. Yeah.
We couldn't find an office that was.
Yeah, it was getting complicated. So I was like, yeah, fine, we'll do it again soon. You know what I mean? So whenever that happens again, I definitely want to hopefully get some lead time and work something out.
Yeah,
so
I would love to do that.
Awesome. Boss man, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate that.
Welcome.
And we're going to stay in touch about other stuff.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.